This episode is brought to you by Green Skies Analytics, an audit analytics service provider that works with internal audit departments that have data analysts and are still frustrated with trying to make analytics actually work, aren't getting the expected ROI, who can't break through the communication barrier between the analysts and the audit team, and those that need experienced direction for an audit analytics strategy and process. Those that feel like they've wasted time and money on trainings, aren't getting the value they want, not prioritizing the highest risk areas for the organizations, or have projects that seemingly never get completed. Do you deal with any of that? If you do, go to the show notes of this episode and click the Green Skies Analytics link, or go to greenskiesanalytics.com to schedule a call and understand how Green Skies Analytics makes analytics actually work for internal audit.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell, and today we have two guests, sort of. We have Aadesh Gandhre, friend of the podcast, who's been on before, who's the CAE at DTCC. And then we have Idania Orengo, who is the Chief of Staff for the Internal Audit Department at DTCC. So we had Aadesh on a few months ago, and for those that are not following him, especially if you're in a leadership position on LinkedIn, follow him on LinkedIn. The stuff that he posts, you could take it and go, oh, that's a good idea. We should start doing that on our team. Regardless of if you have more resources or less resources than that team, there's ideas there that are really good. And so anyway, in talking to Aadesh and getting to know him, I said, you know what? Why don't you pick whoever you want to, interview them for the podcast, and we'll roll with it. Aadesh chose as Chief of Staff Idania. And that is about the extent of what I know about this episode. I literally logged into the platform that would do the recording, hit the record button for them, turned my mic off, went off video, muted everything, and just said, hey, ping me when you guys are done. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. So with that said, here we go.
First of all, Trent, thank you so much, not just for having us on the Audit Podcast, but consistently giving a voice to the people and stories that are helping reshape this profession. And honestly, this episode is a little different. Usually on podcasts like this, you hear the stories from the CAEs, from the different leaders, partners, and audit executives, who are talking about the strategy, AI, innovation, and transformation. But one thing I've learned over the years is this: behind every successful transformation, there are people whose impact, only happens quietly behind the scenes. And today's episode is about one of those people who have made significant contribution in my life, in my career. So for those who may not know me, I'm Aadesh Gandhre. I'm Managing Director and Chief Audit Executive here at DTCC. Over the last few years, our internal audit organization has gone through significant transformation, and we focused on building the human-driven, technology-powered audit function. And that journey recently led to our team receiving back-to-back Audit Innovator Awards at the IIA GAM conference. And more recently, we were recognized for our multi-year consistent innovative efforts through the Audit Trailblazer Award, the award that's sitting right there, in my interesting background right here. But today is not about me. Today is about somebody who's played a significant role in helping make that transformation possible. So here's a little backstory. About 20 years ago, when I joined Goldman Sachs as an IT audit analyst, I was still trying to figure out my path of, what I often call as an accidental auditor. There was one person who believed in me, before I believed fully in myself. And that person was Idania Orengo. And I still remember vividly, one day she looked at me and said, Adesh, I see you one day becoming a global chief audit executive. And when you do, I'm going to come and work for you. At the time, it sounded almost surreal, but those words stayed with me for years. They became motivation, they became manifestation, and I firmly believe in power of manifestation. And in many ways, they helped shape the confidence that I needed to keep pushing myself forward. Fast forward almost 2 decades later, when I became, the CAE at DTCC, one of the first calls I made was to Adania, and thankfully she said yes. She was ready to jump and come here and join with me on this journey. So over the last 3 years, she has been far more than an executive assistant, that she originally joined me on. And she's become a culture builder. She's become a connective tissue across the organization. And more than that, she's a trusted sounding board, and honestly one of the quiet forces behind our dreams transformation. And recently, to recognize the impact that she was already having well beyond the traditional EA role, I promoted her as the chief of staff for internal audit. And during internal audit awareness month, which is the month of May, I honestly could not think of a better person for spotlight, because this profession needs to hear more stories like hers, stories about leadership without titles, stories about influence without the ego, and stories about people who connect the dots across teams, leaders, cultures, and movements. So, Idania, welcome to the Audit Podcast.
Thank you so much, Adash, for this wonderful welcome and for this opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, we're going to start with some human and personal story before we jump into audit transformation, because I know our audience is going to have a lot more, to learn from you from the audit transformation story. But let's start right where we met at Goldman. And you remember this kid coming in, a shy person, and sharing the neighborhood that we were sitting in. So tell our listeners a little bit about your story, your career arc, when you were in Goldman, and how you found your way into supporting internal audit functions over the years.
I remember your first day, and it was we actually sat behind each other, and you came in with the most respect for everyone there. You acknowledged each of us, and you were so thankful every time we spoke. You showed such gratitude for the little things that were part of my job. You were always so inclusive. Whenever there was something that the team wanted to get together, you were also my voice because I was one of the few with kids, and you were the one that would say she can't join. She's a mom. And while I wasn't able to join everyone on these different external occasions, you were always the person that showed me so much support for everything I did. And you spoke so well about me. And I really appreciate that. And I think that gentleness was much needed at the time. And we worked with such a great team. It was a lot of us on that few rows, and we all made an effort to get along, but you actually were the connecting one for all of us. So it's fond memories. And working from internal audit, it just was easy to stay with internal audit. I had the personality and the um, thinking process of an auditor, and I enjoy working in an internal audit department.
Excellent. So now that you work with so many different, people, so many different leaders, personalities across different organization, what do you think makes great leadership stand out, for you?
A great leader is a confident individual, someone that can share the space that they're in, share the knowledge that they have, is not afraid of someone in the room knowing the answer that they may not have had because of insecurity. But when you're a secure individual, you do build a team of individuals that know the information you may not know. You give credit to the people who actually helped. You guide them. You don't look for opportunities to humiliate an individual. You look for, and this is what is wonderful about you, everything that comes out of your ideas has improved teamwork. You're always focused on teamwork. That's like how you have succeeded in bringing us all together, whether it was at Goldman and whether it was at DTCC. Teamwork is the only way to do it. You don't minimize anyone. You explain things because you have a vision and it's so far different than many of us. But you take the time and you explain it, and that's a leader. When I don't understand a question, it doesn't give you an opportunity to minimize me, but you understand I may not see things the way you do, and you take the time to explain it. And at the end of the day, you'll get what you need, and I'll learn something along the way. And it just helps both of us. And it isn't a flex to yell at your colleagues, and it's not a flex to yell at your team. It's not, you're not going to get more respect that way. You're actually going to alienate people. And word of mouth is incredibly powerful when you realize that this industry is actually very small. The word of mouth, when we all know each other or know someone, you don't want a negative thing to be said about you. And you don't have that problem.
Absolutely. And you know very well who's that person who continues to push me. It's you.
Yeah.
So
Oh, thank
I genuinely appreciate our partnership, and
you.
we have many more great things to come. So one thing I genuinely admire about you is your ability to read the room and connect the dots, especially across the different people and the situations. Where do you think that skill comes from?
Because I like to be in the background, I really value first impressions. And by that, it could be how someone meets me versus how they meet you. And we have seen how people react when the title is not high. I think that makes a your first impression is valuable. So when your first impression is smiling to someone with an executive title, but not being so kind to the person without the title, you can't kind of repair a relationship because you didn't try to establish one.
Yeah.
And you also, the loudest person in the room is not the person that is actually going to draw people near them. So when you're the quiet person, when you're the observant person, they may not be including you, but you always have to speak for yourself. I don't let others speak for me. So the person that may not be comfortable with that makes me uncomfortable, but you have to speak. You have to try to establish relationships, and we don't have to be best friends, but we have to respect each other. And when there's no respect, you have to remind others to respect you. And you have to own the narrative. Like it's so important.
I think the message on owning the narrative is so important. And especially for those, who might be listening, where sometimes their cultural upbringing and, who they are, where they came from, sometimes that can become a weakness. In fact, it should actually be their strength. Your cultural identity is your strength. And like you said, being that quiet person listening in, I think that must have given you so much input, that where the EQ comes in, right, where your emotional quotient comes in, and really understanding who the listeners are and how you fine tune your message. That's key. So really great to hear that side. And I know how much you value building the relationships, and how much you value giving the feedback, because we all can be the better version of ourselves. Nobody's perfect, right? But as long as you have an openness in giving each other feedback, which I know you do the most, with me, and I can't thank you enough for that, because that makes me a better person, and likewise. So
See how you receive the feedback? Because you're so secure and you're so confident. You're not feeling as if we any of us tell you something. It's not a criticism of you. It's just an opinion. So, and I would receive your opinion of me the same way. We can only do better. And you only get good feedback if you receive it well. If I spoke to you or gave you a suggestion and you shut me down, I would never tell you anything again. And neither one of us would improve. We all need to be improving. We all need to learn. But watching you is inspiring because you inspire each of us to do a little better. I come to you, and by the time I leave, I have my answers and I know where to go. I don't waste your time complaining because you're such a positive person. You help each of us find the right way to do things, and that's wonderful, Bish.
thank you. I mean, I blame it on my blood group, the B positive, so I can't help it. So, jokes aside, let's go to the hidden side of the audit transformation, because I know that this episode will be really meaningful for those who are looking for, their ins into the side of the audit transformation. So when people hear audit transformation, they usually think technology, AI. Everybody's talking about AI nowadays, right? So we had to throw in AI in the podcast somewhere. But everybody's talking about tech, AI, analytics, methodology. But from your perspective, what is that role that the culture play in the audit transformation?
I think being able to take a step back and as an EA, you can see the multiple meetings. You can see the frustration when the topic hasn't been completed. You can see when you ask others to help them and you're doing things repeatedly or unnecessarily. You have to be able to tell someone, I think there's a simpler way. And if it's a conversation and you're listening to me, I can probably help you. I can take things away from you. And there's always a way to spin something and make it easier, make it user friendly. You have to know who your audience is. We can't have things that are 40 and 50 pages each time. Our audience is not going to read through 40, 50 pages. So why are our teams preparing things that are so depth? We can do it differently. We just have to think transformation is everything differently. A meeting doesn't have to be an hour, it could be shorter. Um, this conversation, if I stop by your office, I could save you time from your emails. I don't have to send you an email and come to your office 5 seconds later and say, did you get my email? No, we're all professionals. We got your email and I will respond as soon as I can. Um, and transformation comes in many forms, but at the end of the day, is it simpler? Did it get the job done? Is it better? And as long as we're open to it, we can transform anything.
Amazing. I think that's a great words of wisdom right there. And I think it's what's really important is outside of the culture, also having that vision, right? And the vision to really do bigger things, better things. If your vision is limited, the transformation is going to be limited, right? So you've had the front row seat now on our transformation journey at DTCC Internal Audit. What changes felt the most meaningful to you?
We were very lucky to come in on a blank slate, and you are so receptive to ideas. And that professionalism that you bring to internal audit, whatever we were doing, we could do so much more. And everything that we have touched, everything that we've created has been so successful. But at the same time, it hasn't been without including the team globally. And the most rewarding part of the last 3 years was that we were able to have a 3-day global conference with all of our colleagues in a town hall that was being built, and we had no idea what it would look like. No idea if our walkthrough was even going to take place, where the CEO, the audit committee chair, we had panels and speakers and trivia. We had so many things squeezed in 3 days, and we just kept scheduling. No idea if it could take place. And when it was completed, we asked for help from the AV team and building services, and we didn't get any pushback. Like there were no mistakes. There was nothing that we had to take off because it was that inclusive, that creative, but it was so well done. It was well received as well.
And I think it was all kudos to you for the idea, the execution, and getting people together, from across the globe, where we had some people who had not met each other, even though they have been working, and it was, the COVID times and people joining in during that time, working remotely. It was really important to get them together, build that bond, and I think we are still getting the benefits out of the global summit we did last, 2 years ago, and now we've been more in the virtual hybrid capacity. We had one audit academy recently, which was again, thanks to you for the execution. So a lot of people underestimate the influence that someone in the EA or chief of staff role can have. So how do you view the role differently, both the EA role that you played before as well as the chief of staff, the role you're playing now?
View it differently because we all bring something to the job. But as an EA, you said we should do a conference. I can't say no. Like you ask for something, I have to come as an EA and deliver. I can't promise and not deliver. Like I can't say, sure, let's do a conference and then we wouldn't have done a conference. We have to get the job done. You said you wanted to bring everybody together, not the next year, but maybe in 2 years. And that's exactly what we did. We had our first conference in 2024 and the virtual summit in 2026. And it's just meeting expectations. We wanted to open up and show, like let's make this team more talkative, and it's just whatever ideas you had or I had, we delivered. We had ideas and they're not rocket science, but it was just like how do you include everyone and it's just been an opportunity after opportunity, and it's given other departments even inspiration to do the same. They join us. Um, the awards that you've gotten for internal audit, like you see the department technology wise, I can see the department communication wise, presentation, and you're still delivering every single time in the most professional manner. You show up every global huddle, you open the remarks, and it's just like it's a different topic every time. Our sessions are always different, always innovative, very fast energy. And when Frank Lasala talks about transforming DTCC, I think internal audit is showing that off. We have transformed internal audit.
No, that's great, and I think that's where the strong partnership,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
we have built
Yeah.
really comes in handy. So let's talk about this collaborative and high performing teams,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are some of the things that the leaders or so-called leaders, right, often miss when trying to build the collaborative and a high performing team environment?
As a leader, you should be able to own your work, but you also have to allow others to show their work. And when they have shown you their work, let them finish it. Let them experience mistakes and come to you with questions. Leaders don't have to do everything by themselves. You should be able to establish relationships with each of us that we come to you if there's an issue. But you should be able to help us understand what you want to do in a way that we understand you. It's not running through instructions or changing it tomorrow or getting upset because that's not what you wanted. But then on our side, we could say that that's what you asked for. So taking a step back and saying, okay, my instructions weren't clear. Let's start over. That's a lot easier to do than to yell or scream and say this person is unable to do the work. Um, but you have to give people a chance. And if they're not stepping up, tell them what they're not doing right. And if they're not doing it right, you need to have serious conversations. You can't just let someone struggle. And I think you are able to see where I struggle and you're able to give me advice. Um, and I really appreciate that. Like a leader can actually, you have 93 people that when you say something, we understand what you're trying to explain because you're so clear. Um, but I think leaders need to take a step back. It's as if they just joined the company. What would that person need to hear from that leader in order to understand the instructions? And a lot of people don't do that, and they should. It would help a lot.
Absolutely. And like the feedback I give you, I appreciate the feedback you give me every time. And I know there's probably only one person who can give me the feedback, as straight as you give me, and I appreciate that. Please continue doing so. So you've helped organize everything, from the leadership meetings to the audit academy that we spoke about, which involves, the senior most executives like our CEO who came recently, the audit committee leadership. So what have you learned about, how the strong organizations they communicate and align?
I learned how important it is top down. Leadership from the top down is the most important. The example from the top leader, Frank Lasala, always encouraging and thanking everyone for their hard work and actually giving our company step by step instructions on what he's looking for. There's training if we don't understand, there's teams that we can ask questions if we need to. But I also see the expertise here. There's a lot of expertise. Like, this is such a diverse company. We can learn so much. Um, and take advantage of it. There's training. There's opportunities. I just did the reverse mentoring. I got to meet someone I never would have met before, and I learned about his team. Take advantage of the things that we have here. There's so many ERG groups. Leadership here is, I think, more hopeful that the teams all join them in whatever they're trying to do. So they would support whatever needs to be done in order to get where they want to go. I think the DTC leadership has been very, very helpful in helping me understand what the company is. I think when they speak at the town halls with the State of the Union for Frank Lasala, we understand their responses. It's well thought out. They come prepared, and they show all of us come prepared, ask real questions, in-depth questions. They're ready for it. They're ready for the next step. And I think seeing what happened in internal audit shows them it can happen to any department. So we just have to have the right teams.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on a topic which you know is a topic near and dear to my heart, which is the topic of ERGs, right? The employee resource groups. What role has, networks like ERGs, played not just in DTCC, but throughout your career? Because I know how actively involved you are in the ERG network.
When you have a name that's so different, it takes a lot of patience to to hear the different interpretations of your name. And then you get to the point where you realize either you make the effort to get to know me and say my name correctly, or you don't. And then one person a long time ago said she doesn't explain her name anymore. If you can say charcuterie board, you can say any of our names. And I think you and I had different names when you first joined. And when you think back, if an ERG was in place, we wouldn't have said, oh, it's okay, the mispronunciation of our names, because it's one thing to mispronounce it, it's one thing to continuously say it wrong. And an ERG many years ago would have had us look at the person and say, but that's not my name. An ERG here, they always make sure they acknowledge each other. They are very kind. I was able to host a online session for Unidos when I first got here, and I just had a few months here. These are opportunities that weren't given to us before, but I think it also reinforces how we have to respect ethnicities, we have to respect genders, um, and if you don't go to these different events, then you can't complain that they don't exist. We have to be very proud of ourselves. We have to show each other respect and call out when there isn't respect. The ERGs here are very important.
Absolutely. And most of all, they also provide an amazing networking platform.
Absolutely.
And I know personally so many people
Hmm.
who had new doors, from career point of
Yes.
view open for them through
Yes.
a ERG network. So, we,
Yes.
we, we should definitely continue working on
Yes.
that. So, talking about the human side of the innovation,
Hmm.
right? We're not going to talk about the AI, as we said, but the human type of the innovation. So, we say human-driven, technology-powered audit function. So, from your perspective, what does that human-driven part matter? Why does it matter so much?
It matters because no matter which application you use, whether it's AI, Copilot, whatever you use, if you're not even able to have a conversation, you can't submit a request to Copilot to create it for you. If you're not able to, if you're not the creator of the work you're presenting and there's an error, if you're not able to correct it on site right there and say, sorry, there's an error, let me fix that, but you need to step out and get back to you. That's not your work. That's AI. If you don't even go through the document and um, edit out all the different prompts that a Copilot can create, that's not your work. AI is an opportunity to improve our work. And if you know your work, it'll make it better, but it's not going to replace our work. You have to still go to someone and have a conversation. You still have to have ideas. You still have to look at something and improve it. AI is not going to do that for you. And a human person can give you advice, whereas AI, you're it's just you and the computer. Like, how could you not want a human interaction? We all need to improve it. Take advantage of it. Step up to someone and have a conversation, but also have a conversation with everybody, not just the general auditor of the department. Have a conversation with everyone.
Absolutely. And I think conversation is what makes us human. And, as you said, the how part, how some things get done. I think that's pretty much solved, with respect to the tools, technologies that we have. But the what and the why part is where certainly the human element comes in. And so, but one of the most confusing and to some people the intimidating words can be innovation, because you hear this every day in different meetings, town halls, that we have to innovate. But then you've seen innovation up close in many practical ways here in your previous jobs. What advice, would you give to people who think that innovation is only for the technologist or only for the senior executives?
I work differently, perhaps, than many people. When I hear innovation, I hear what you're envisioning, but what I see is the final product, and I work backwards. So that helps me fill in if this happens, I should do this. If that happens, I should do that. So working backwards helps me make sure that if you ask to color this room purple, I can deliver because I went backwards. So if I want to do this, what do I have to do to get there? Whereas some people hear an idea and it's innovative and they need a team and a group and ideas, but then you have to all agree, but you're still not figuring out how to get there. And I think that if we look at something the same way, and for you, it's just like you can give me an idea or a request. I have to envision what you see. For me, working backwards helps me fill that in. And that's why I can come to you with questions, and you have to come prepared with all the questions. You have to have all the information because you're going to ask me questions about what if this happens? What if that? For me, if I've worked backwards, I have all those answers in front of me and I don't have to delay the deliverable. Um, and innovation isn't bad if it improves all of our jobs. I think in the last year, we realized how many things are repetitive that don't need to be done in the audit process. Go for it, change it, update it. We don't need to have a million spreadsheets. Let's do it differently. We have to um, meet expectations as a department. Let's come up with different ways. And so I think that we can't keep resisting. We can't go back to what we did 5 years ago. We can't resist because we did it 5 years ago. You have to think forward because companies can go out of business very easily because the competition is so great. So let's be innovative. I think that if you look at internal audit over the last few years and you see how different everything that we have done, not one thing has been the same. That's innovation. It's a small piece, but it's a representative of innovation, transforming, simplifying. It's enjoyable. It's well received. That's innovation. And it's just a small idea going over to you and saying, Adesh, I don't like the way the huddle was when you first joined here. And it was just you speaking to everyone. And then you asked if there's any questions, and no one had a question because the comfort level wasn't there. Our huddles now have colleagues presenting, colleagues performing. They are owning the room, they're answering the questions. I mean, the confidence is there now. And it's just a small twist, and it may not be considered innovation because it's not technology, but it's innovation because it improved internal audit. We can't overlook we can't classify one type of innovation better than the other. It's all if it improves, if it helps, it's innovation. Don't be afraid of it.
I think you couldn't have said any better. I think sometimes people get this, into this mindset that it needs to be a big bang innovation. It doesn't have to be. It can be very simple, and that is something which I feel that we have certainly seen many cases of. One example recently where for the benefit of the listeners, somebody in our audit team created a co-pilot agent for the exam coach. And this is in line with the upskilling drive that we have in internal audit here at DTCC, where people are studying, and of course, everybody has their day job, their work, their life. And this person thought of creating an exam coach that can help that person pass the certification. And now that exam coach has been used by multiple people, and that's innovation right there.
But it's a global innovation because that person is in our Manila office.
Yeah,
That the
exactly.
person that benefits from that agent may never have even had a conversation. But now they have the confidence to say, look what I created. It may help you. And the department knows them. I think it's wonderful when we do that. That's innovation.
So, talking about the Internal Audit Awareness Month, May is being celebrated as Internal Audit Awareness Month, which is about helping people better understand what this profession is. It is one of my favorite topics, which is to demystify internal audit and putting internal audit in this mode of being a lighthouse and not a spotlight. So, for people who may not be aware of what internal audit is, what do you wish that they understood about careers in internal audit or in general internal audit as a profession?
Internal audit as a profession shows other departments how they can do things better. But you're not going to be welcomed with open arms. You have to develop the relationships. So, what you've been able to do is reestablish the importance of internal audit in DTCC. And there's a trust there. You are handling situations with so much confidentiality, they can trust you, and you ensure that their information and their comments and their needs are addressed, not in a gotcha moment, which is like what internal audit used to be. You're approaching it with a not all of us do everything great. There's always areas that we can improve, and you're always encouraging us to offer better ideas, better ways of doing things. And that has opened up internal audit in conversation. Now you hear the conversations, you hear the how well received internal audit is. Like, you are able to put executive committee members together to talk to you about internal audit. And they're comfortable meeting with you because they're not going to be attacked. And they support you in what you're doing, and you're not going to be attacked. It's an open discussion. And you have changed internal audit from the mindset we have witnessed over the years. You have brought all the positives of other management styles that you've witnessed, and I'm sure it's from stakeholder meetings that you've seen in the past. You come up from senior analysts, like you know the different roles as an auditor. So when someone is saying this is difficult or that stakeholder is difficult, you are able to say we have to change things. We have to improve the relationships. And I hope people just look at you and emulate you, because you can't enter a room and be happy if everyone hates you. Like, that is not the way to do it. So, I think internal audit gives you an opportunity to establish being professional with others, establish your voice. If you have an opinion, if you see something that can be improved, you're able to do that. And you're showing us all every single day better examples.
Thank you. I mean, somebody when they ask me a question, what's that ideal profile, for an internal auditor that I can see? I don't think there's any ideal profile, right? I think we all bring our different perspectives, different academic experiences, different cultural diversity related, experience that we may have, and having that in audit team is actually great, because then we'll have people thinking differently on one audit, and we may be able to identify the blind spots. That's where we add the value, right? So
Well, the
there's
value also comes from the conversation. Even you doing this podcast with me, it's like it's giving others a perspective that maybe they didn't think about. In talking with someone that used to be your executive assistant at another company and maintaining relationships, but that just shows an example. That's a small example of how you maintain relationships, you improve relationships. It's important to you. And that comes across very clearly every single day. So we have to keep that in mind. What we do today, we're kind of interviewing for the next job. We're setting ourselves up that it's a small world. We got here and a former colleague's husband works here. Like, it's just such a small world. Like, we have to make sure that we are bringing our most professional behavior to the office. And when the stakeholders are in the room with us, we have to be cognizant of their time. We have to be cognizant of our tone. And you're setting the example all the way across. It's very important.
No, that's great. I think wonderfully said. So, one final question, and I know that I can go on this podcast, but I know Brent wouldn't allow us to go on and on. So, one final question, for early career professionals, right? Especially those who may have had some experiences because of who they are, where they came from, and maybe they're not able to find their voice. So, what advice would you like to give about building that confidence and finding their voice?
I would suggest for everyone, don't let anyone speak for you. If there's an issue, if someone is kindly coming up to you and saying, "Would you like me to speak to someone for you?" No, get comfortable with the conversation. I'm a very shy person. I can envision things, and we connected on our shyness. So I have to step up. I have to I can't come to you with, "Please help me." I have to come to you with a problem, a solution, and an idea. And I think if we all come to the conclusion that our managers are not there to save us. We have to have our own voice. So if there's an issue, you have to address it. If someone wasn't speaking to you well, you have to call them out on it. You're not fighting. It's not a fight. It's owning your voice. When you're working on something and it's your idea and you put it together, no one gets to own that for you. If you're talking and you're having a little moment, someone doesn't have to say on your behalf, but you're trying to say, give people a moment. If you're feeling uncomfortable, the only way it'll change is to speak up. And I've always been very vocal and perhaps more vocal than others, but it's just, it just irks me when someone is trying to minimize one person in order to make themselves look better or another person. And I call it out all the time, and I've always done that. Um, and I always will do it. I'm not going to shy away from what has to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the quality that I really admire. So, Idania, I truly appreciate you doing this. I know, and you said before, the shyness. I know
Mm.
stepping into this spotlight it's not
Mm.
your natural comfort zone,
No.
which honestly makes this even more meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wanted to have this conversation because our profession needs to broaden how we define leadership and impact, and hear more stories, like stories from yourself, because I don't think transformation happens because of one person,
No.
right? It happens
Mm.
because of people who build trust. It happens because people who connect the teams. It
Yes.
happens because people who create the culture and who are quietly elevating the program
Yes.
and the everybody around them. So you've done exactly that throughout your career. I'm grateful for everything you've contributed, and personally, what you've contributed towards my career, building my confidence over the years, and now building this internal audit organization here at DTCC, winning these awards. So truly appreciate that. And last but not the least, Trent, thank you again for giving us this platform to tell a different kind of story during the Internal Audit Awareness Month, because these are the stories that truly show what makes our profession special. Really, incredibly. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.